The day I found the cease and desist letter taped to my workshop door, I was already running behind on 3 orders for split firewood that needed to be delivered by the weekend. My name is Quincy Shepherd, and I had been running my firewood business from my property in rural Montana for the past 8 years. My 5-acre lot in the Pine Ridge Estates subdivision sat perfectly between Billings and the smaller mountain communities that relied on my wood during the brutal winter months. I was the only commercial firewood supplier within 50 miles, and business had been good until the Homeowners Association decided to stick its nose where it did not belong. The letter was printed on official letterhead with the Pine Ridge Estates HOA logo at the top. I ripped it off my door and read through the legalistic nonsense while my blood pressure climbed with each sentence. According to this document, my hydraulic firewood splitter violated some obscure noise ordinance that I had never heard of in my 8 years of living here. The letter was signed by Rebecca Fletcher, the HOA president who had moved into the neighborhood just 6 months ago. I crumpled the paper in my fist and yanked open my workshop door. My splitter sat exactly where it always did, a beautiful piece of equipment that I had saved for 3 years to buy. It was not even that loud compared to the chainsaws and other equipment my neighbors used regularly. This had to be some kind of mistake. My phone rang before I could process what this meant for my business. It was Tom Hendricks, one of my biggest customers who owned a lodge up in the mountains near Red Lodge. "Quincy, I hate to push, but we're getting cold fronts moving in earlier than expected. Any chance you can bump up that delivery to Wednesday instead of Friday?" I looked at the letter in my hand, then at my splitter. "Let me call you back, Tom. Got a situation I need to sort out first." After hanging up, I immediately dialed the HOA office number printed at the bottom of the letter. A chipper voice answered after 2 rings. "Pine Ridge Estates HOA, this is Melanie speaking." "Yeah, this is Quincy Shepherd from 4782 Mountain View Drive. I need to speak with Rebecca Fletcher immediately. She sent me some letter about my equipment." "Oh, Mr. Shepherd. Yes, Rebecca mentioned you might call. Unfortunately, she is in a meeting right now, but I can schedule you for office hours tomorrow at 3. Tomorrow? I have a business to run. I need this sorted out today." I understand your frustration, but Rebecca is very busy. The 3 o'clock slot is the earliest I have available. I forced myself to take a breath. Getting angry at Melanie would not solve anything. "Fine, 3 o'clock tomorrow. But tell her this better get resolved because I have customers depending on me." That night, I dug through all my HOA paperwork from when I had purchased the property. The covenants and restrictions were typical suburban nonsense, mostly about lawn maintenance and fence heights. There was a section about business operations, but it specifically stated that home-based businesses were allowed as long as they did not create excessive traffic or constitute a nuisance. I had maybe 1 delivery truck come to pick up wood per day, if that. This was rural Montana, not downtown Los Angeles. The noise ordinance mentioned in the letter was supposedly added in an amendment from 3 months ago. I had never received notice of any such amendment, which seemed suspicious. HOAs were required to notify all homeowners of covenant changes, and I checked my mail religiously because of my business. The next afternoon, I showed up at the HOA office 15 minutes early. It was located in a small building near the entrance of our subdivision, a place I had only visited once when I first moved in. The waiting area had the sterile feel of a doctor's office, complete with uncomfortable chairs and outdated magazines. At exactly 3 o'clock, Melanie gestured for me to go into the back office. Rebecca Fletcher sat behind a large desk that seemed too big for the small room. She was probably in her mid-40s, with that specific haircut that had become a meme on the internet. Her blazer looked expensive, and her makeup was applied with the precision of someone who took appearances very seriously. "Mr. Shepherd, please sit down." Her voice was syrupy sweet, but her eyes were cold. "Thanks for seeing me. Look, there has to be some mistake with this letter. I have been running my business here for 8 years without any complaints." Rebecca folded her hands on the desk. "Oh, there is no mistake. We have received multiple complaints about the noise from your wood-splitting operation. It is disruptive to the peaceful enjoyment of the neighborhood." "Multiple complaints? From who?" "I am not at liberty to disclose that information. Complainants have a right to privacy." "That is convenient. So I am just supposed to accept that anonymous people have a problem with my business." Her smile never wavered. "The complaints are legitimate, I assure you. Furthermore, the noise ordinance clearly states that commercial equipment producing over 75 decibels is prohibited between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. First, my splitter is not even that loud. Second, I never got notice of this ordinance change. You are required to notify homeowners. Notices were sent via email to all residents 3 months ago. If you did not receive it, perhaps you should update your contact information on file." I clenched my jaw. "The only email I have on file is the one I check daily for business. I never got anything." Rebecca pulled out a folder and made a show of flipping through papers. "According to our records, notice was sent to, let me see, qshepherd@mountainmail.com on September 15th. That is not my email address. Mine is quincy.shepherd@woodsupply.com. That has been on file since I moved in." She pursed her lips. "Well, that is unfortunate. However, ignorance of the rules is not an excuse for breaking them. The ordinance is in effect and you need to comply immediately. I have orders backed up. People depend on my wood for heating. This is Montana in October. I cannot just stop operating." "That sounds like a personal problem, Mr. Shepherd. The HOA has a responsibility to all residents, not just you. If you continue to operate your equipment, we will be forced to take further action, including daily fines of $250. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This is ridiculous. I am going to fight this." "That is your right. You can file an appeal and present your case at the next HOA board meeting, which is scheduled for November 20th. That is over a month away." "Yes. Well, we only meet quarterly unless there is an emergency. Have a good day, Mr. Shepherd." I left the office fuming. This was clearly a power play, but I could not figure out why Rebecca had decided to target me specifically. I had never even met the woman before today. When I got home, I called my lawyer, David Chen, who had helped me set up my LLC when I started the business. After explaining the situation, he was quiet for a moment. "Quincy, this is tricky. HOAs have a lot of power, and if they are claiming you violated a covenant, you will have an uphill battle. Even if they screwed up the notification, proving that might take time. What are my options?" "You can file the appeal like she said, but that takes weeks. You could also sue the HOA for improper notification and restraint of trade, but that will be expensive and time-consuming. In the meantime, if you keep operating and they fine you, those fines can add up quickly, and they can even put a lien on your property. So I am just screwed?" "Not necessarily. Let me do some research on Montana HOA law and see what kind of leverage we might have. In the meantime, is there any way you can fulfill your orders without using the splitter on your property?" I thought about it. "I guess I could split wood at the source where I cut the trees, but that is way less efficient and will cost me time and money. It might be worth it to avoid the fines while we sort this out. Give me a couple days to look into this." I spent the rest of the evening calling my customers and explaining that deliveries would be delayed. Most were understanding, but Tom from the lodge was stressed. His guests paid premium prices and expected working fireplaces. Running out of wood was not an option for him. I can wait until Friday, but that is the absolute latest, Quincy. If you cannot deliver by then, I will have to find another supplier. I will make it work, Tom. I promise. After I hung up, I sat in my workshop and stared at my splitter. 8 years of building this business, and now some HOA Karen with too much time on her hands was trying to shut me down. It did not make any sense. The next morning, I loaded my splitter onto my trailer and drove out to the National Forest land where I had permits to harvest timber. It was a 40-minute drive each way, which ate into my productive time. Splitting wood on location was also more dangerous because I did not have my full workshop setup. But I did not have much choice. I worked from dawn until dark, only taking breaks to drink water and eat the sandwiches I had packed. By the end of the day, I had processed maybe 60% of what I could normally do in my workshop. My back ached, and I was covered in sawdust and tree sap. Over the next week, I fell into a grueling routine. Drive to the forest, split wood, load it onto my truck, drive to customers, unload, drive home, collapse into bed, repeat. I was barely keeping up with orders, and I had to turn away new customers because I simply did not have the capacity. David called me on Thursday with an update. I have been going through the HOA bylaws and Montana law. The good news is that the HOA definitely screwed up the notification process. They are required to send notice via certified mail for covenant amendments, not just email. The bad news is that proving your case will still take time. How much time? If we file a lawsuit, we are looking at months, maybe a year before it gets resolved. Appeals within the HOA system are faster, but you are still looking at waiting for that November meeting, then another 30 days for them to make a decision. I cannot wait that long, David. I am already losing money and customers. There might be another angle. I did some research on Rebecca Fletcher. She only moved to Montana last year from California. Before that, she was involved in several lawsuits related to HOA disputes in her previous neighborhood. She has a pattern of aggressive enforcement and was actually removed from one HOA board for overstepping her authority. So she has got a history of this. Exactly. If we can show that she is targeting you specifically without proper cause, we might be able to get an injunction preventing the HOA from enforcing this ordinance until the legal issues are resolved. But I need more evidence. Have you talked to any of your neighbors about whether they actually complained? Not yet. I have been too busy trying to keep my business afloat. Make time. If we can prove that Rebecca fabricated or exaggerated the complaints, that is huge for our case. That evening, I walked over to my nearest neighbor, Bill Morrison. Bill was a retired electrician who had lived in Pine Ridge Estates since before it was even fully developed. If anyone knew the neighborhood gossip, it was Bill. He answered the door in his usual flannel shirt and jeans, a beer in hand. "Quincy, how's it going?" "Hey, Bill, got a minute to chat?" "Sure, come on in, want a beer?" "I better not. Driving later." "Listen, I wanted to ask you something. Have you heard any complaints about my firewood operation?" "Anyone in the neighborhood bothered by the noise?" Bill scratched his beard. "Your splitter?" "Hell no. That thing is quieter than Joe's riding mower, and he runs that damn thing at 6 in the morning. Why do you ask?" I explained the situation with Rebecca and the HOA. Bill's expression darkened as I talked. "That woman is a piece of work. She has been trying to fine me for my fence being half an inch too tall. Half an inch. I've had that fence for 15 years, and now suddenly it is a problem. So she is going after other people too." "Oh yeah." She tried to make the Hendersons paint their house because the color was not on the approved list, even though they painted it that color 10 years ago. And she sent a violation notice to the Carters because their Christmas decorations were up past January 5th. She is on a power trip. Has anyone actually complained about my business? Not that I have heard, and people tell me things. Most folks think it is great having a local firewood supplier. Hell, I buy from you every year. This was exactly what I needed to hear. Would you be willing to sign a statement saying that? My lawyer thinks we can fight this if we prove Rebecca is making stuff up. Absolutely. That woman needs to be taken down a peg. Let me know what you need. Over the next few days, I talked to a dozen neighbors. Not a single one had complained about my business. In fact, several were angry on my behalf and offered to help however they could. 3 of them admitted that Rebecca had targeted them with frivolous violation notices as well. I compiled everything and sent it to David. He was thrilled. This is perfect, Quincy. I am going to file for an emergency injunction first thing Monday morning. With this evidence, we have a solid case that Rebecca is abusing her authority. That weekend, I was splitting wood out in the forest when I got a call from an unknown number. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. Mr. Shepherd, this is Janet from the Pine Ridge Estates HOA board. I need to speak with you about Rebecca Fletcher. Janet turned out to be one of the other board members, though she admitted Rebecca made most of the decisions without consulting the rest of them. I have been on this board for 6 years, and I have never seen anything like her. She is writing violation notices left and right, some for things that are not even in our covenants. Several homeowners have complained to me directly. Why have not you done anything about it? I tried bringing it up at our last board meeting, but Rebecca shut me down. She is very good at manipulating the rules to get her way. But after hearing about your situation, I started digging. The noise ordinance she claims you are violating, it was never properly voted on by the full board. She drafted it and sent it out without our approval. My heart started pounding. Are you serious? Completely. I have the emails to prove it. She sent the ordinance to homeowners claiming it was approved, but there is no record of a board vote in any of our minutes. That means it is not actually enforceable. Would you testify to that? I will do you one better. I am calling an emergency board meeting for next week. Rebecca has violated our bylaws, and I am going to move to have her removed as president. I already talked to the other 2 board members and they are on board. We are all tired of her antics. This was almost too good to be true. What do you need from me? Just show up at the meeting with your evidence. Between what you have and what I have, we should be able to oust her and void that fake ordinance. The meeting is Tuesday at 7 p.m. at the community center. I immediately called David and filled him in. He was cautiously optimistic. This could resolve everything, but do not count your chickens yet. Rebecca is not going to go quietly, and she might try to fight back. He had no idea how right he was. On Monday morning, I found another notice on my workshop door. This one was even more aggressive than the first. It claimed I had continued to violate the noise ordinance by operating my splitter, and I was being fined $7,000, the accumulated daily penalties since the first notice. Additionally, the HOA was placing a lien on my property for the unpaid fines. I called David immediately. She is escalating. Can she actually do this? If the ordinance was valid, yes. But since it is not, these fines are completely bogus. Save that notice. It is more evidence of her abuse of authority. In fact, this might actually help our case because it shows she is acting recklessly. It does not feel helpful when there is a lien on my house. I know, but trust me. We are going to get this sorted out. Just hold tight until tomorrow's meeting. That night, I could barely sleep. $7,000 in fake fines, my business barely hanging on, and everything riding on a board meeting. I kept thinking about what would happen if Rebecca somehow managed to keep her position. Would she escalate even further? Try to shut down my business completely. Tuesday evening, I arrived at the community center 30 minutes early. The meeting room was small, with chairs arranged in rows facing a table where the board would sit. I took a seat in the front row and waited. Other homeowners started trickling in. I recognized several of my neighbors, including Bill Morrison. Janet arrived and gave me a discreet nod. The other two board members, Paul and Sandra, came in together, looking nervous. Rebecca was the last to arrive, precisely at 7 o'clock. She walked in like she owned the place, her heels clicking on the tile floor. When she saw how many people had shown up, her confident expression faltered for just a moment before she recovered. "Good evening, everyone. I was not aware we had so much interest in this emergency meeting." Janet stood up. "I notified all the homeowners, as is required by our bylaws. Transparency is important, especially when we are discussing serious matters of board governance." Rebecca's jaw tightened. "Of course. Shall we begin?" Janet wasted no time. "I am calling this emergency meeting to address concerns about actions taken by our HOA president, Rebecca Fletcher, that violate our bylaws and potentially Montana law. Specifically, I am referring to the noise ordinance that was distributed to homeowners 3 months ago." "That ordinance was properly enacted," Rebecca interrupted. "Actually, it was not. I have reviewed our board meeting minutes going back 6 months, and there is no record of any vote to approve this ordinance. Our bylaws require a majority vote of the board for any covenant amendments. You drafted and distributed this ordinance unilaterally." The room erupted in murmurs. Rebecca's face flushed red. "That is a mischaracterization. The board was informed." "Informed is not the same as voting and approving. I have the emails right here. You sent us a draft and said you were sending it to homeowners, but you never called for a vote." Janet held up a stack of papers. Paul, one of the other board members, spoke up. "She is right, Rebecca. I remember that email." "I thought it was just a proposal, not something you were actually implementing." Sandra nodded. "Same here. I never voted to approve any noise ordinance." Rebecca stood up, her chair scraping loudly. "This is absurd. I have the authority as president to make operational decisions." "You have authority to manage day-to-day operations," Janet said calmly. "You do not have authority to unilaterally create new covenants. That is explicitly stated in Article 7 of our bylaws." I raised my hand. "Can I speak?" Janet nodded. "The floor recognizes Quincy Shepherd." I stood and pulled out my folder of documents. Rebecca sent me a cease and desist order claiming I was violating this noise ordinance. When I investigated, I found that not only was the ordinance never properly approved, but I never received proper notification. She claims notice was sent to an email address I have never used. Then, when I could not immediately comply with her fake ordinance, she fined me $7,000 and put a lien on my property. I handed copies of everything to the board members. Rebecca tried to interrupt several times, but Janet kept cutting her off. "Furthermore," I continued, "I talked to over a dozen neighbors. Not one of them had complained about my business." Rebecca claimed multiple complaints, but she refused to provide any documentation. I believe she fabricated the complaints as an excuse to target my business. Bill Morrison stood up from the audience. "I will vouch for that. I live right next to Quincy, and his operation has never bothered me or anyone else I know. Rebecca is lying." Other neighbors started calling out in agreement. The meeting was turning chaotic, and Rebecca looked like she wanted to disappear through the floor. Janet banged a gavel. "Order, please. Thank you all for your input. Based on this evidence, I am moving to immediately suspend Rebecca Fletcher as HOA president pending a full investigation. Do I have a second? Second, Paul said immediately. All in favor. Paul and Sandra both said aye. It was 3-1, with Rebecca obviously voting against her own suspension. The motion passes. Rebecca, you are hereby suspended from your duties as president, effective immediately. You need to turn over all HOA files, passwords, and materials to me by end of business tomorrow. Rebecca's face went through several shades of red. You cannot do this. I will sue the HOA. That is your right, Janet said calmly. But this decision is final and was made according to our bylaws. Furthermore, the noise ordinance you created is void, as it was never properly approved. Quincy, you are free to resume operating your business without restriction. The fines and lien are dismissed. I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Finally, after weeks of stress, this nightmare was over, but Rebecca was not done. She grabbed her purse and pointed a finger at me. This is not over, Mr. Shepherd. You have not heard the last from me. She stormed out of the community center, leaving stunned silence in her wake. After the meeting, several neighbors came up to congratulate me and apologize that the situation had gotten so out of hand. Janet pulled me aside. I am sorry you had to deal with this. Rebecca should never have been allowed to abuse her authority like that. We are going to review all the violation notices she has issued and void any that were improper. Thank you, Janet. I really appreciate you stepping up. It is what should have been done from the start. If you incur any costs because of this situation, legal fees or lost business, document everything. The HOA may be liable, and Rebecca definitely is personally liable for acting outside her authority. David was thrilled when I called him with the news. That is even better than I hoped. Make sure you get written confirmation that the fines and lien are dismissed. I will draft a letter to the HOA demanding compensation for your legal fees and lost income. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. The next morning, I was back in my workshop, splitting wood with my beautiful hydraulic splitter. The familiar sound of the machine was like music to my ears. I called Tom at the lodge. Hey, good news. The HOA situation is resolved. I can get you that full order by end of week. That is fantastic, Quincy. I knew you would come through. What the hell happened? I gave him the short version. Tom laughed. Only in an HOA would someone have that much time to harass people. Glad it worked out. Over the next few days, I worked overtime to catch up on backed-up orders. My regulars were understanding, and I even picked up a few new customers who had heard about my situation and wanted to support local business. I thought everything was behind me until the following Monday when I got a call from Janet. Quincy, we have a problem. Rebecca is refusing to turn over HOA materials. She claims she still has legal authority as president and is threatening to sue anyone who acts against her. Can she do that? Legally, no, but she can make things difficult. I have already contacted our HOA attorney and they are sending her a formal demand letter. I just wanted to give you a heads up that she might try to come after you personally. Great, just what I need. That afternoon, I was in my workshop when a car pulled up my driveway. A woman I did not recognize got out, carrying a clipboard. She was probably in her 30s, wearing business casual clothes. Quincy Shepherd. That is me. Who are you? My name is Amanda Price. I am a private investigator hired by Rebecca Fletcher. She has asked me to document any noise ordinance violations on your property. I could not believe what I was hearing. You are kidding me. No, sir, Mrs. Fletcher maintains that she still has authority to enforce HOA covenants, and she is building a case to sue the HOA board for wrongful termination. As part of that case, she needs documentation of ongoing violations. First of all, she was suspended, not terminated. Second, the noise ordinance is void because it was never legally enacted. Third, if she keeps harassing me, I will be the one suing her. Amanda held up her hands. I am just doing my job, sir. I will note that you are currently operating a hydraulic wood splitter at. She checked a device that looked like a decibel meter. 72 decibels. I will include that in my report. You do that. And while you are at it, note that I have documentation from the HOA board confirming I am not violating any valid covenants. Rebecca is wasting your time and her money. Amanda shrugged. That is for the lawyers to sort out. Have a good day, Mr. Shepherd. After she left, I immediately called David. Rebecca hired a private investigator. She is trying to build some kind of case. David sighed. She is grasping at straws, but this could drag things out. Let me reach out to her attorney and see if we can resolve this before it gets uglier. Sometimes a stern letter about potential harassment lawsuits and attorney fee liability makes people reconsider their actions. I hope you are right. I am tired of dealing with this. The next few days were tense. Amanda, the investigator, came back twice more, each time taking noise measurements and photos. She was always polite but clearly just following Rebecca's instructions. Then things took a turn I did not expect. It started getting cold early that year, with temperatures dropping into the teens at night by late October. Suddenly, my phone was ringing off the hook with orders. Everyone wanted firewood and they wanted it now, including, ironically, Rebecca Fletcher. I was in my workshop when my business phone rang with a number I did not recognize. Shepherd Firewood Supply. Yes, hello. I need to order firewood for delivery this week. It was Rebecca's voice, though she was clearly trying to disguise it slightly. I am pretty booked up this week. Can I get your name and address? There was a pause. This is Rebecca Fletcher, 3891 Oakmont Drive. I almost laughed. You are kidding. I am a customer requesting service. Are you going to discriminate against me? You hired a private investigator to harass me last week. You tried to shut down my business with fake fines. And now you want me to deliver firewood to you. My furnace is broken and the repair company cannot come until next week. I need firewood to keep my house warm. I am willing to pay your standard rates. This was too perfect. Tell you what. Since you live in Pine Ridge Estates, which is my normal service area, I can deliver to you. But given our history, I will need payment in full upfront, and there is a $50 rush delivery fee. That is outrageous. You are welcome to find another supplier. Oh wait, I am the only one within 50 miles. Your choice. I could practically hear her teeth grinding over the phone. Fine. How much? I quoted her the price for half a cord of split wood plus the rush fee. It came to $450. She agreed, though she sounded like it physically pained her. I will need payment via bank transfer before I load the truck, and I will need to verify it has cleared before delivery. After I hung up, I called David and told him what happened. He cracked up laughing. That is beautiful. Make sure you document everything perfectly. No way she can claim you did anything wrong if you treat her exactly like any other customer. The money came through that afternoon. I loaded up half a cord of my best seasoned oak and drove it over to Rebecca's house. It was a nice place, bigger than most in the neighborhood, with a 3-car garage and professional landscaping. I backed my truck into her driveway and started unloading the wood into a neat pile near her garage. Rebecca came out when I was about halfway done, wrapped in an expensive-looking coat. Just stack it there, she said coldly. Yes, madam. This is good seasoned oak, should burn clean and hot. You will want to make sure your damper is adjusted properly. She did not respond, just watched me work with her arms crossed. When I finished, I handed her a receipt. Pleasure doing business with you. If you need more, give me a call. I will be finding another supplier as soon as possible. Good luck with that. Like I said, I am the only commercial operation within 50 miles. There are a few guys who sell wood as a side hustle, but they are usually sold out by this time of year. But hey, maybe you will get lucky. Her expression suggested she knew I was right. Montana winters were no joke, and firewood was a necessity, not a luxury. Over the next week, the temperatures kept dropping. A freak early winter storm hit the area, dumping 8 inches of snow and knocking out power to parts of the county for 2 days. My phone never stopped ringing. I was working 16-hour days trying to keep up with demand. Then Janet called me. "Quincy, I need a favor. Several homeowners in Pine Ridge Estates are in a bind. The cold snap has hit early, and people are going through firewood faster than expected. Can you prioritize deliveries to the neighborhood? I am doing my best, but I am only one guy. I can probably get to everyone within a week." "That would be great. Oh, and funny thing, Rebecca called me yesterday asking if the HOA could do something about the firewood shortage. I told her maybe she should not have tried to shut down the only supplier in the area." I laughed. "How is the situation with her going?" "She is still refusing to turn over HOA materials, so our attorney filed a motion in court. We should have a hearing in a couple weeks. In the meantime, she has been sending violation notices to homeowners, but everyone is ignoring them because they know she does not have authority anymore. She is making it worse for herself." "Exactly. The attorney thinks we might have grounds for a restraining order if she keeps harassing people. But that is not your problem. Just wanted to update you." The next afternoon, I was making a delivery to the Henderson family when I saw Amanda, the investigator, parked on the street, watching me work. I waved at her and she pretended not to notice. After I finished unloading, I walked over to her car and tapped on the window. She rolled it down, still working for Rebecca. "Just doing my job, Mr. Shepherd." "Has she paid you for the last week?" Amanda's expression flickered. "That is between me and my client. I am going to take that as a no. Word of advice: get your money up front. Rebecca has a habit of thinking rules do not apply to her, including paying people for their work." I walked back to my truck, leaving Amanda looking uncomfortable. That evening, David called with news. The HOA's attorney reached out to Rebecca's lawyer. Apparently, she has been funding her legal fight and the private investigator with HOA money. She still has access to one of the accounts, and she has been writing checks to herself for legal fees. "Are you serious? That is embezzlement." "Exactly. The HOA is filing a police report tomorrow. This is not just a civil matter anymore. Rebecca could face criminal charges." Things moved fast after that. The police investigated and found that Rebecca had written herself checks totaling over $15,000 from HOA accounts. She claimed it was reimbursement for legitimate expenses, but she had no documentation to support that claim. The detective handling the case, a guy named Martinez, called me for a statement. "Mr. Shepherd, I understand Mrs. Fletcher targeted your business. Can you walk me through what happened?" I gave him the whole story, providing copies of all the letters, notices, and documentation. Martinez was thorough, asking detailed questions about dates and times. "This fits the pattern we are seeing. She has been using her position to harass homeowners and enrich herself. We are building a case for theft by deception and abuse of power. It might take a few months, but she is going to face charges." While the legal process ground forward, winter hit hard. By mid-November, we were seeing highs in the 20s and lows near zero. My firewood business was absolutely slammed. I hired 2 part-time helpers just to keep up with splitting and deliveries, and then Rebecca called again. I need more firewood. My furnace repair got delayed again and I am almost out. I can get to you next week. I am backed up with orders. Next week? I will freeze by then. Should have ordered sooner. I can put you on the list, but I have other customers ahead of you who ordered days ago. This is ridiculous. You are doing this on purpose. No, I am running a business. You are a customer like anyone else. You do not get special treatment just because you are upset. I will pay extra, Mrs. Fletcher. I have 10 other people willing to pay extra for rush delivery. First come, first served. I will get to you when I get to you. She hung up on me. But 3 days later she called back, her voice much more subdued. Mr. Shepherd, I apologize for my tone the other day. I really do need firewood as soon as possible. Is there any way you can move me up on the list? This was shocking. Rebecca Fletcher was actually being polite. I can get you delivered by Friday. Same rates as before. Thank you. I appreciate it. When I delivered the wood on Friday, Rebecca looked exhausted. She came out in sweatpants and a heavy jacket, watching me unload without saying much. You doing okay? I asked, surprising myself with the question. Just cold and tired. This winter is brutal. Yeah, it came early this year. You might want to order another half cord for later in the season just to be safe. She nodded. I will. Look, I know things got out of hand. I made mistakes. I stopped working and looked at her. Rebecca, you tried to destroy my business over nothing. You fabricated complaints, created fake rules, and fined me thousands of dollars. Then, when that did not work, you hired a private investigator and stole HOA money. That is not making mistakes. That is malicious. Her face hardened. I was trying to maintain standards in the neighborhood. No, you were on a power trip. You wanted control, and when people did not fall in line, you punished them. That is not leadership. You do not understand the pressure of trying to manage an HOA. Then you should not have volunteered for the job. Good luck with the criminal charges. I finished unloading and left without another word. Some people never took real responsibility for their actions. In early December, the HOA held a special meeting to elect a new president. Janet was voted in unanimously. One of her first acts was to officially void all of Rebecca's unauthorized violation notices and fines. She also implemented new rules requiring board approval for any enforcement actions over a certain dollar amount. We want to make sure what happened to you never happens to anyone else, Janet told me after the meeting. The HOA should serve the community, not terrorize it. The criminal case against Rebecca proceeded slowly. Detective Martinez kept me updated occasionally. They had built a solid case with the financial records, and Rebecca's attorney was trying to negotiate a plea deal. In mid-January, I was invited to the prosecutor's office to discuss the case. The assistant district attorney, a sharp woman named Lisa Rodriguez, explained the situation. We are offering Mrs. Fletcher a deal. She pleads guilty to theft and abuse of authority, pays full restitution to the HOA, performs 200 hours of community service, and stays on probation for 2 years. In exchange, we drop the more serious felony charges and she avoids jail time. That seems light for what she did. I understand your frustration, but this is her first offense and she is showing remorse. If we go to trial, there is always a risk of acquittal. This way, we get a guaranteed conviction and she faces consequences. What about my losses? She cost me business and legal fees. You can sue her in civil court for damages. A criminal conviction will make that case much easier to win. I discussed it with David, who advised me to let the plea deal go through. Focus on the civil suit. With a criminal conviction, she will have no credibility and we can get you compensated for everything. Rebecca pled guilty in late February. I attended the hearing, sitting in the back of the courtroom. She stood before the judge looking small and defeated, nothing like the confident woman who had tried to shut down my business months earlier. The judge accepted the plea but added some harsh words. "Mrs. Fletcher, you abused a position of trust in your community. You targeted innocent homeowners, fabricated violations, and stole money to fund your vendetta. The only reason you are not going to prison is because this is your first offense. But make no mistake, if you violate the terms of your probation, I will not be lenient." Rebecca nodded, her voice barely audible. "Yes, Your Honor, I understand." After the hearing, David filed our civil lawsuit. With the criminal conviction as evidence, Rebecca's attorney quickly moved to settle. We ended up getting $20,000 to cover my legal fees, lost business, and general damages. It was not a fortune, but it was enough to make me whole. The check arrived in April, just as the weather was starting to warm up. I deposited it and allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. After months of stress and uncertainty, everything had finally resolved in my favor. My business was stronger than ever. Word had spread about the situation, and I had picked up a lot of new customers who respected how I had handled the harassment. I hired another full-time employee and bought a second hydraulic splitter to increase capacity. Janet and the new HOA board were doing a great job managing the neighborhood. They focused on actual community improvement, organizing social events and maintaining common areas, rather than harassing homeowners over petty violations. I even saw Rebecca once more at the grocery store in town. She was loading bags into her car and I almost walked past without acknowledging her, but something made me stop. "Hey, Rebecca." She looked up, startled. "Quincy, hello. How are you doing, managing? I am working at a call center now, trying to pay off my restitution and legal bills." "That is rough. I deserve it. I was out of control. I took things way too far and I hurt a lot of people, including you. I am sorry." It was the first genuine apology I had heard from her. "I appreciate you saying that. For what it is worth, I am in therapy now, trying to figure out why I felt the need to control everything. Turns out I have some issues to work through." "Good luck with that. Seriously," she nodded. "Thanks, and congratulations on your business doing so well. I see your trucks around town all the time now." "Yeah, it has been a good year." "Take care of yourself, Rebecca." As I drove home that evening, I thought about how strange life could be. A year ago, I had been just a guy running a small firewood business, minding my own business. Then an HOA Karen on a power trip had tried to destroy me, and in defending myself, I had ended up stronger than before. The whole situation had taught me important lessons about standing up for yourself, documenting everything, and not letting bullies push you around. It had also shown me that communities were stronger when people focused on cooperation instead of control. My phone rang. It was a new customer from over in Columbus, about 40 miles away. "Hi, I am looking for a reliable firewood supplier. I heard you are the best in the area. Happy to help. Let me tell you about our delivery options." As I discussed cords and pricing, I smiled. Rebecca had tried to shut me down, claiming I was a nuisance to the neighborhood. Instead, her actions had made me more successful than I ever imagined. Sometimes the best revenge was not revenge at all. It was just living well and building something good. The Montana winter would come again, as it always did, and I would be ready, splitting wood and serving my community. No HOA Karen was going to stop that. The rest of the year passed quietly. My business continued to grow. The neighborhood thrived under Janet's reasonable leadership, and Rebecca completed her community service without incident. I had made it clear I would not pursue any further action against her as long as she stayed away from me and my business. By the time the next winter rolled around, The whole ordeal felt like a distant memory. I had 2 full-time employees, 3 splitters, and enough equipment to serve customers across 3 counties. I had even started offering delivery services to some of the smaller towns further out. One afternoon in late September, Janet stopped by my workshop. "Hey Quincy, got a minute?" "Sure, what is up?" "The HOA board wanted to formally thank you for your patience and professionalism during the situation last year. We also wanted to ask if you would be interested in serving on the board. We think your perspective as a business owner and long-time resident would be valuable." I thought about it. A year ago, I would have said absolutely not, but things were different now. "You know what? Yeah, I would be interested. As long as it is clear that I will vote against any nonsense that targets homeowners unfairly." Janet laughed. "That is exactly why we want you. We need people who will push back against overreach. We meet once a month, usually just an hour or two, nothing too time-consuming." I joined the board that October. It was actually kind of nice being involved in neighborhood decisions, knowing I could help prevent anyone else from being targeted the way I had been. We kept rules simple and reasonable, focused on genuine community needs rather than petty control. The firewood business kept me busy and provided a good living. I had accomplished what I had set out to do when I started 8 years earlier: build something sustainable, serve my community, and make an honest living doing physical work I enjoyed. Sometimes I thought about Rebecca and wondered if she had really changed or if she would eventually revert to her old patterns. But that was not my problem anymore. I had my business, my community, and my peace of mind. That was enough. As winter approached again and orders started rolling in, I felt grateful for everything that had happened, even the difficult parts. The whole experience had made me stronger, more confident, and more aware of my rights. It had also connected me more deeply with my neighbors, many of whom had become good friends. The hydraulic splitter hummed in my workshop, doing exactly what it was designed to do. No HOA Karen could stop it. No fake ordinances or harassment could shut it down. It was just a tool, operated by someone who knew his rights and was not afraid to stand up for himself. And that made all the difference.